Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our new podcast focusing on white wine tasting. Join us as we uncover new grape varieties and introduce you to wine producers that may have slipped past your attention. Additionally, we will delve into the historical, geographical, and ethical aspects of wine with a particular focus on sustainability. My name is Darina Blogina.
And my name is Uli Fusenegger.
What are we having in front of us today?
Well, today I would say we have something very special. It's a kind of wine which I got to know like only 3 years ago. It's called Erbaluce, which is an Italian grape. Erbaluce di Caluso, which describes kind of a very special region here in the northwestern part of Italy, where this wine comes from.
Maybe we should also remark that we are now in Italy at the lake that is called Lago Maggiore, and it's an incredibly beautiful view out of the window.
Yeah, it's not just randomly happening that we chose this wine, because it's like 70 kilometers from here where this wine is growing. It's all the region of Piedmont where we are now, and we thought it would be maybe a good idea to have a reference and take a wine from the region. So I have to say we are both not that experienced with Erbaluce. We maybe tried, like, what did we have? Maybe 10 different ones in our life. But this special one from the producer Benito Favaro, it's his name. I visited his place like 1.5 years ago and bought some of it because it tasted so fantastic.
And what do you know in general about this grape? Why did you decide to go for it?
The first time we had this, it was actually here in Stresa, where we're also now in a restaurant, and we wanted to have a glass of wine, not getting a bottle, and we were asking, so what do you have? And they were saying, yeah, we have a Pinot Grigio, we have a Arneis, and we have an Erbaluce, and we did not know about it, so we tried it out, and it was quite convincing. So that's how we got confronted with the grape. And the Erbaluce, it has it's an autochthonous sort of grape, which is actually here in the region, north of Italy. They say there are 31 different synonyms for Erbaluce. The most famous ones are Greco or Greco di Caluso, which describes this region, or Greco di Novara. But there are many other synonyms. So it's a very old grape, and it was for a long time, it was known as a very average wine. And like 20 years ago, like advanced winemakers found out that this wine could have quite a potential and started to produce it in a very good and elegant way. And that's why we're now having this. Well, we did not taste it yet, but I think it will be great.
Do you know any other types? Because it's something ringing a bell inside of my head that it can be also a red version of this grape. Does it exist?
I never heard about that there is also a red one. Well, what we have here now is a Erbaluce di Caluso. There is also this Erbaluce di Novara. So different regions have this, are using this grape. It's a related grape to region. Then it gets a label, this wine. It says DOCG, which means Denominazione di Origine Garantita Controllata. So it's kind of controlled that all the grapes are coming from this region. It comes from a region which is controlled, and it's guaranteed that it's controlled. So, it's a bit bureaucratic, but why is this so? Well, you could find like, I don't know, any famous wine, like an Arneis or another famous wine from the Toscana, and the grapes are coming from Sicily or from Apulia, where they very much mass produce wine, and as it's so warm there, it's also growing like hell. So they kind of found this label to guarantee that the grapes are really from the region, so that it's a local product. That's why this DOCG.
So in a way, it kind of supports the idea of sustainability and ecological approach to nature.
Absolutely, and it features, of course, a lot in terms of trust. When you're going to a local producer, it's his grapes, it's really the grapes from the region, which also, it's nice when it's local and it's great, of course, in terms of sustainability, but you also know then how the grapes are treated, so if they're grown in a biological way or whatever. If you buy them on the market, like tons of grapes, which you can do, there are big markets for grapes, you do not really have control how the grapes would have been treated before they were harvested. So, you can still see if the grapes have good quality, but you have no idea what had happened before.
Is it a deciding point for you that you always buy wines from the people that you know in person?
Yes, I must say I try to. It's not that I would never buy a wine from the supermarket, but sometimes you can find a good wine also in the supermarket. But when this is the case, I then try to visit the producer and get to know him personally, because it's very often you kind of detect more interesting things about the wine when you know a bit what is behind and how it's exactly produced, or why he's trying to push a taste into that or the other direction.
And how do you start your research? Could you give a hint? How could one start a research if they know they're visiting a wine region and they would like to buy a sustainable wine from a local producer? Where to start?
Well, it's always good to have several approaches. Of course, you look at the internet just to find out what is this grape about, where is it growing. But then a very good thing is when you go to a good restaurant, not just a random restaurant, and you talk to the waiters or you talk to the owner, how they found out why this wine is good. So I must say, in my life, I detected many good wines in restaurants, and then by talking to the owners, and sometimes they even gave me a contact directly to this winemaker and said, hey, say hello from me and stuff, On the one hand, it's just a classical research on the internet. On the other hand, it's a very, it's also talking to people who are business-wise connected to the subject.
So what is the image of this wine if we talk about people who know a bit about this grape, and what could one expect from this wine when they see the name of the grape?
As I was saying before, people thought it would be a random grape for mass production till 20 years ago. And now they kind of started to find out that this grape has a great potential. So it is kind of known for a very dry, a pretty fresh, pretty mineralic, and also sometimes towards fruity and also a bit spicy character. So depending how exactly it's produced, but that's kind of it's more the range. So I would say far away from a Burgunder style, which is more like round, and it's more on the edgy, on the spicy, on the fresh side, kind of this wine. And when it's well produced, it obviously has also a great potential to stay in the bottle for 10 years and not lose its acidity, what often happens, or loses its freshness. So when the structure is good enough, it kind of works for a pretty long time. But coming back to your question, I had no idea about Erbaluce. So, and even when we are going back to Switzerland or Austria or whatever, and we talk to somebody to Erbaluce, if they're not really super familiar with wines, they would never know what this is about, because it's hard to find also in Germany.
I would like to introduce a new feature, and I would like to ask ChatGPT about today's grape.
Let's do that. Maybe meanwhile I put a bit into our glasses.
So our little research is done. It's a white grape variety primarily grown in the Piedmont region of Italy. So exactly where we are now, particularly in the areas around the towns of Caluso and Canavese. And we are exactly drinking today this wine from Caluso. So these wines are known for their unique flavor profile. This is a very mysterious statement. It's interestingly corresponding with your description. They are typically featuring crisp acidity and refreshing minerality, making them very food-friendly.
Yeah, they talk about green apple. No. I did not experience that, but citrus fruit, I like lemon and grapefruit. I absolutely agree. And also this herb and floral aromas. Yeah, as we said, depending on the direction, how it's produced.
Fantastic. So maybe you could also give a hint, how could we start our approach to a glass of wine? Okay, we take maybe a special glass. What do you think about these different shapes of glasses?
I totally think it makes a big difference which kind of glass you would use. But I think we have here quite universal glasses, so they are not too big. Those one you would use more for heavy red wines. They close a bit towards the upper part. That means that's easier to smell because it focuses a bit the smell. To me personally, I have these glasses, and when you have a very special wine, you maybe would once take a bigger one. But yeah, it's also a big bohai about that. I think it should be clear enough that you can still see the color. As we do it, we just shake it a bit and then take a first smell.
Sounds good.
Shall we go for it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the scent of this wine I would describe as definitely including some notes of apple. Maybe not green apples. Rather, I would refer it to, yeah, of course, with our culture of supermarkets, it's not so easy to imagine anymore, but I would imagine an apple from my grandmother's garden.
Yes, definitely not a Granny Smith. Or some of these creepy apples. No, I agree with the apple. It has some old taste, kind of, in a good way.
Okay, yes. That's a wonderful wine, I must say.
Mm-hmm.
Quite outstanding.
That is somehow great about these grapes you do not know about, because this combination of tastes you never had before. I must say I really like it a lot. It's a super good one. Maybe we should also mention that this wine is from 2021. I think I bought it in end of 2022 or beginning of 23. I don't remember. It's absolutely outstanding.
How would you describe the taste?
Well, I would first say it has a very strong structure. It's super clear. It has not so much fruit in the taste, what you would expect from the smell. I think it's super mineralic, which I really like a lot. It almost has a tiny bit of a salty aspect in the taste, which I like a lot, I must say, with white wine. And also my fruit association would be like something like orange zests a bit. That's just like in the background, especially in the back of your mouth, not so much in the front. Yeah, let's try again.
For me, it kind of felt a bit spicy in a way, and I would also refer it to the oranges, but also to its flower. I don't know if you have ever tried to smell a flower of an orange, which has kind of this compilation or this mixture of a flower and fruity scents together at once. And for me, I would say it's a very small flower. Oranges, they have really tiny flowers. But for me, it kind of reminds of that.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, because I totally agree with this aspect of spice. But at the same time, I experience this wine as extremely round in all its different aspects of taste. That's what I meant. It seems to be so well structured. There's not one feature kind of taste-wise standing out a lot, but it's very round. And concerning spice, because I grew up with Grüner Veltliner, which is one of the really spicy wines, so I'm kind of very much used to that, and I love that a lot. So when this opens up in a different wine, I do not kind of point it out. But if, for example, if you were mainly used to drink Chardonnay or Pinot Blanc, something like that, of course, this spice aspect you will experience very clearly, because it's far away from what these kind of wines would normally taste like.
Actually, now with the second sip, I have noticed something at the background which reminded me of mint taste, like fresh mint.
Interesting.
What I'm talking about is like,
I did not have this, but maybe I should.
Fresh mint in a mint tea, maybe.
Yes, I totally agree, but maybe we should mention to our listeners that, well, we opened this bottle now like 15 minutes ago, and with the oxygen coming up, of course, this wine, especially in the first half an hour in the glass, it really changes a lot. It's also what makes kind of wine drinking and wine tasting so cool, because as you were mentioning before, we're just white wine lovers, and this aspect that it's not kind of a stable taste, but it really changes. Maybe not its character, but its different aspects in some minutes. That's kind of very interesting, because you won't have that with many things, not like that. So that makes it kind of interesting also.
It's a bit like this pyramid of a perfume scent that opens up during a certain period of time, and what is remaining, it's only this like ground notes that can be totally different and not noticeable at first when you just apply the perfume or you try it somewhere in a shop.
As you were quoting before ChatGPT, when it's in the end of describing, you often have this in restaurants that they say, to which kind of dishes does this wine fit? I do not like so much that personally, because I must say the wines I really like, I normally drink them standalone. And when Darina and I were having an evening together and opening a bottle, cooking and then eating, I often experience the interesting part of drinking is before having the food. After that, well, you have the food, and of course it matches kind of fine, the wine we chose, but the experience of the wine itself, it's more interesting before the food, I must say, because after that, all your synapses, they work in a different way, and I think it's more interesting before eating. Well, that's a very personal perspective, I have to say.
I was also wondering if with the red wine, I know that you don't drink red wine, if you have experienced the same development over the time, over a certain period of time during an evening, when you take a first sip and then in 15 minutes, does it also change its qualities?
Absolutely. With red wine, I think it's even more dramatic because especially kind of very good red wine, like a Brunello or a Bordeaux or whatever, you know, all these kind of famous brands, they're mostly grown in oak. When you open then a bottle, very often in the very beginning, the oak taste of the wine is very present, and it definitely needs some oxygen to round up in the glass. So I would say that's with red wine, and especially with older red wine, it's even more dramatic. That's why they do this decantieren, putting it already into the glasses, that it really gets enough oxygen to kind of develop its full richness.
The scent of this wine, what I can feel from my glass, I definitely could describe it as a herbal feeling that kind of gives me a feeling of summer field full of beautiful field wildflowers, and maybe very warm summer, a day in July, full of sun, wind, and fantastic smell of summer grass.
With this grass aspect, I totally agree, even in the smell, but also in the taste. I mean, not so strong like maybe with a Sauvignon Blanc you would experience, but it's definitely present, and it's quite changing.
This aspect of grass, sometimes I notice it when we drink Grüner Veltlinger, that it's also on this grassy side, but in this case it feels in a different way.
Because it's just one aspect of the whole complex of taste, so it's in another relation, and it's something which can happen, I think, with an Erbaluce, and it happens with this one, but it's maybe not smart to take the conclusion this would happen anyway with an Erbaluce, or if it not happens, the Erbaluce is not so good. So it's this specific wine. And that's also what I like a lot when you have this kind of very personal way of wine production of the not big producers. That means no industrialized procedures. You have these very individual tasting profiles also, because they are not... The wines are not designed to a direction which is kind of expected from the market, and that makes it very nice. So, as you were mentioning Grüner Veltliner, there are many very good Grüner Veltliner which are not spicy at all, because they just go into a different direction. And but expectation, of course, in the wine market, it's a very, very important tool and a big selling aspect, because people who go to the supermarket, buy a Sauvignon Blanc, you expect this kind of grassy taste, this kind of super freshness, which is fine. I mean, I don't want to criticize that, but my approach is kind of a bit different.
Yes, and it's interesting, and maybe we should not forget that every person is individual, and what seems a grassy taste for me or for you, it maybe can mean something else for another person. Maybe if there would be somebody else now in the room, they would say, no, it tastes for me like a tree or something, mm-hmm. or like winter, or like a winter apple or something like that. Yeah, it's very unique and individual, but I think generally a very good bottle of wine is able to cause such beautiful associations in our head.
Yeah, that's totally true. And what you were mentioning, it touches a very important aspect, because we always try to find synonyms with wine. It tastes like salt. It tastes like fruit, apple.
Even like a stone?
Yeah. So there, I mean,
I have never tried a stone tasting.
It's also, like with smelling. So we try to describe something where we have not absolutely clear words or parameters for, and that makes the thing also so interesting, because you have, as an individual, you have also the space to experience it that way, and it's not right or wrong. And I think that's a very nice thing about it.
It has a clear parallel with music.
I agree.
It can mean anything for different people. So on that great note, we go on drinking. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining.